Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa Olson from the Smart Weight Loss Coaching podcast. I've been working with Julia for almost 100 episodes now, and she has really helped me grow my podcast from basically just my parents, my husband and kids, and my sister as listeners to over 17,000 downloads. I mean, the amount that she expanded my audience went way beyond my expectations. She really blew my mind. I have quadrupled the number of downloads over the past 12 months. Julia has been so much more than just my podcast teacher. She has been like a partner to me, really taking an interest in my program and helping me more than I ever could have asked for. I highly recommend Julia.
How amazing is that? I am so grateful that Dr. Lisa shared her experience. And if her story resonated with you and you're thinking, wait, I want results like that too, that is exactly what we're doing inside the Podcast Growth Collective. It's the place for online business owners who want to turn podcasting into a powerful growth tool without the burnout and without guessing what to fix. If you're ready to stop spinning your wheels and finally start seeing results from your podcast, I would love to support you. Head to thepodcastteacher.com/collective to learn more and to join us. And now let's jump into today's episode. Welcome to Podcasting for Introverts. I'm Julia Levine, aka the Podcast Teacher. I'm a fellow introvert, entrepreneur, and educator. If you want to start a podcast and expand your reach without social media, this is the show for you. Let's get started. Hey, and welcome back. Today is a momentous occasion. It is my first interview episode. I met my interviewee, Frances Vidakovic, through a business membership. I introduced myself and what I do, and Frances commented with, I'm a seriously introverted entrepreneur that has somehow still managed to record 400 plus podcast episodes. I love podcasting. And I thought, holy bananas, 400 episodes? I have got to talk to this gal. Fast forward, and in just a few minutes, you'll hear our conversation about how she got started with podcasting and how she pushes past fears. She also shares her secrets for keeping up with content creation and publishing over 400 episodes. But before we transition into that conversation, I want to make sure that you've heard about the Podcasting 101 workshop that starts next week, January 8th, 2024. This workshop is to help you kickstart your podcast so that you can finally make it happen in 2024. In the workshop, I'll walk you through crafting a detailed profile of your ideal listener, breaking your overall topic down into content pillars and episode-specific ideas, determining the best format and frequency for you, strategically choosing the name of your show, picking your launch date, and laying out a strategic plan for your best chance of making the Apple Podcast charts. Throughout the entire workshop, you will also receive personalized support from me inside of a private pop-up community. You don't want to miss it. You can find more info and register at thepodcastteacher.com/workshop. And now, on to the conversation with Frances. Today, I am thrilled to have Frances Vidakovic join me as a guest on the show, my very first guest. Woohoo! Frances is a life coach and a course creator who helps ambitious women take action and achieve their goals without sacrificing their family life and their sanity. She's the face behind the award-winning website, inspiringmomlife.com, host of the Inspiring Mom Life podcast, and her superpower is transforming dreamers into doers. Welcome, Frances.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be your first guest, a fellow introvert. So I'm definitely in the right place.
Yay, I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to do this interview with me. And I would love to just kind of kick off our questions today by asking you to share what inspired you to start your podcast.
Okay, I feel like I've got two answers to this question. Like, number one is I was a writer, first and foremost. I started as a blogger. And I don't know if you've ever had like a pen pal, like I'm aging myself, but when I was young and I would write my letters really to connect, I felt like I wanted to speak to that person. And so I felt the same when it came to my audience. Like I really wanted to take it to the next level because there's only so much you can do when you are writing. Like you want to express yourself in ways that can't always be conveyed in written word. So that was the first like inkling of an idea that I wanted to start a podcast. And the other thing that I like from a business perspective, I had to like really consider like, who do I love and adore the most in the business space? Who do I buy things from? Who do I want to work with? And it was always people that I felt connected to on a deeper level. And almost always it was because I was hearing them speak. You can tell someone's like authenticity and you just feel like you know them all when you hear them speak. And so that was when I was challenging myself just to consider embracing this idea, even though I was totally petrified. There's a saying like, feel the fear and do it anyway. I was feeling all the fear. And they also say like, everything that you want is on the other side of fear. I knew that I just at least had to try. It wasn't necessarily going to be perfect. But in terms of like growing in my business, it was hard to ignore the fact that I knew that I had to do it and it was going to be scary, but I just wanted to take that first step. So that was where the idea to start a podcast happened like 3 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, that feel the fear and do it anyway phrase, that is so influential in my life as well. And, you mentioned you knew the podcast wasn't going to be perfect, but you knew that you needed to do it anyway. And that is exactly how I felt. I am a huge perfectionist and I had a whole episode about how I had to get over perfectionism to start this podcast and make this happen. So I can definitely relate to that. And I'm sure you, dear listener, can definitely relate to that as well. And so that kind of leads me into I would love to hear you say how the podcast has helped contribute to either your personal growth or your business growth. Obviously, it's been a journey and a challenge. And so, what kind of like transformation have you experienced over the course of doing this?
Well, I think because I started as a writer, it's like a very private thing to do. You do it in your own little quiet space. You don't worry about anyone else in the world. You're not always thinking about like, what do people actually need to hear? What do people want to hear? Like, how can I take it to the next level? And so for me, in terms of like personal growth, I had to like step up to the plate and see if people were wanting to know information, how can I just share it on a deeper level? And in terms of, I had to do things that I necessarily wasn't feeling comfortable with. Like, I am a serious introvert. I love my home. I love like staying in my little quiet place and doing my work on my own. And so when you agree to start a podcast, like there is a little bit of expectation that there's going to be consistency to it. Like you're committing to something that I'm someone that follows through on my goals. So I knew like I needed to be willing to make that commitment. I mean, not just to myself, but to my audience. Like if I'm going to show up, I have to do it every week and I have to do it consistently. And so I think that really in terms of both business and personally, I think that I realize now that I was committing to a bigger vision than myself. It was more like rather than just sitting there and writing whenever I felt like it, I was forced to come up and do it every week. And the coolest thing is, and I think it's like, because I've written lots of novels, but every time you sit down and you put pen to paper, even if you don't have an idea, the ideas always come to you. And the same is with a podcast. Like if I didn't have a podcast, like I have over 400 episodes. There's no way that if I didn't have a podcast, I could imagine what I could talk about over 400 episodes. But I've done it because I've got something to show up for every week. I've committed to something. The ideas come to me because I've chosen and made a commitment to doing something and showing up every week. And it's not always even for me. It's like showing up for the audience who continues to want to know, like, how can they achieve their goals? How can they take action? How can they just live an inspiring life? If people ever have questions, like the podcast is the best place to answer it.
Yes. Wow. There's so many golden nuggets in there. I'm trying to figure out which one to expand upon. Oh my goodness. You mentioned 400 episodes, which is one of the reasons I asked you to come on the show, because I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. A fellow introvert keeping this going for 400 plus episodes. That's impressive for anybody, but especially for an introvert who may not be as comfortable with putting themselves out there as we tend to do sometimes. So you mentioned, needing to show up, kind of the accountability to your audience is something that has helped you keep going. And, you may know or you may not know the statistics, but it's something like 90% of podcasts fail by the time they get to episode 10.
I don't even know how that's possible. Like, how? Like, if you've committed to something, you just go with it unless you aren't loving what you're doing. That's different. But I just think that if you've committed to something and you know in the depths of your heart and in your gut that it's the right thing to do, and it's just like an extension of your business, why not keep on going if you're in love with what you do? Even if it's hard. Like, I'm so used to doing the hard stuff. And it's really funny when you talked about perfectionism. I think part of the reason, because I was really successful as a blogger, I think I've had like 8 million people visit my website today. And part of the reason that it worked in my favor was admitting to everyone, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes all the time. I have lots of flaws. And so for me to show up and do this work is that if I had to expect myself to be perfect, I wouldn't have even recorded episode 1. If I go back and listen to episode 1, it is so cringeworthy. It's so bad. The only way I got better was by continuing on. Like, there's a difference between episode 1 and episode 100 and 200. Like, I've gotten better over time. But because I never expected myself to be perfect, and I freely admit I am just a normal human like everyone else in the world, I stuff up all the time and I do things and I share that. I think that's also helped like connecting with my audience. I never wanted to be like, I know everything and I'm going to teach you. It's like, I'm just like you. Like, I might be a little bit ahead in certain areas and I'll always share with you things that are working for me, but I'm never perfect. Definitely not perfect. The podcast is not perfect. And that lack of pressure on myself has probably led to me continuing on and on and on. Because if I send someone my way, it's like those early episodes, they're a bit messy. They're imperfect, but that's okay. The content's always good, but just my own confidence in myself and in the way that I can deliver material has just grown over time, but only because I've persisted. I think in terms of starting a podcast, like those stats, you've got to walk into it, number one, knowing that you're going to be persistent and consistent when it comes to it, and just doing it even if you don't feel like it. If you feel like in your gut it is the right thing to do, I'm not talking about like following through on something that your heart's not in it, but if the only thing that's holding you back is fear, and then you've got to get over that fear.
Wow, that is so valuable. And I can imagine that even if you are committed to something, there's got to be moments and times when you just kind of sit down and it's like blank page syndrome, where that cursor is kind of blinking in your face. And it's like, what on earth am I going to talk about this week? And you've committed to showing up. So you're going to show up, you're going to record something, but maybe there aren't ideas flowing. Maybe it's just a really stressful time. I know one of the common fears of people who want to start a podcast but haven't taken the leap yet is they are concerned about being able to keep up with it and keep it going and not running out of content. So what would you say to people who are concerned about that running out of content piece?
I have the best ideas for that. The reason why I've always found coming up with content for the podcast really easy is that I'm like a master when it comes to repurposing. Like, if you're already writing emails to your list, if you're already sharing blog posts on your website, and if you're already writing social media content, just use that as a springboard for your episode. There have been lots of times that I've written an email to my list and I thought, oh my gosh, like I should just expand on that a little more. Now, part of the thing that also worked in my favor is I only record 10-minute, 12-minute episodes, so really short and sweet. I didn't have to like talk forever and ever. Like, I've chosen a mode of delivery that is just so simple for me. So for me to come and speak for 10 minutes, I can do that. And so in terms of content, I just look at whatever I've already produced. Unless nothing else is going on in your business, which I can't imagine to be true. But if you are speaking to your audience in different ways, use that. I'm pretty sure that some of my really early episodes were just me looking at old blog posts. It's like, how can I deliver that in the form of a podcast? How can I give a summary? How can I do that? Just using what you already have. If you've written a genius social media post, expand on that as a podcast episode. Go deeper. Just answer questions or things that people might be wanting to know a little bit more. that's how I've made it as easy as possible because I am showing up in different areas of my business. I'm still writing emails every week. I still post on social media. So I just use that and I actually use them all together. If I've written an email, the email is going to be used partly in my social media content and in the podcast. If I come up with a podcast idea first, I'll switch it over and use it, but everything comes together. So it's not like I've got different segments and, different ideas have to happen in different areas of my business. They all work together to make my life so much easier. And as long as you're producing content in other areas of business, you can produce content on your podcast.
Yes, absolutely. And I will add on to that and say that one of the things that I'm doing is just drawing from my own personal experiences. And so, I'm only a couple episodes into the podcast at the time of this recording, but I am drawing from what I am feeling and experiencing right in these moments, because chances are, if I'm feeling it and experiencing it, that someone else is too. And so kind of takes that pressure off to think of something brilliant and just kind of be real.
I don't know if I've never sat down and thought, oh my gosh, I have to come up with something brilliant. Sometimes I'll have a little, like you said, a little story happens in your own life and you're like, this would be such a good thing to be chatting about. And then something brilliant comes from it. But the idea itself is never brilliant to me before I sit down and record. The brilliance comes when you're on the computer and in front of your microphone and you let it flow out of you. Sometimes I actually think I sit down at the microphone and I have a general idea of what I'm going to be talking about. This is after like 400 episodes. Obviously, when I started in the beginning, I had more of an idea, like a little script, and then the script became bullet points that I could elaborate on. But sometimes I now just say, well, I know that I want to be talking about this sort of idea. And then I wait and see what comes out. And because they're only short episodes, something always does come out. It's almost like I discovered, and I'm sure you're going to discover it over time. But the more like when I sit down, like the things that come out of me, it's like I'm almost like stepping into not a different person, but all these ideas come to me when I'm in front of the microphone. And the brilliance comes when I'm sitting down. If I don't sit down, I will never discover that.
Very, very true. Very true. So you talked a little bit about how your first episodes weren't perfect and how if you go back and listen, it's kind of like cringe-worthy at this point in time. But of course, in order to get better, you have to keep going. And so for those people who are just thinking about getting started, they're having trouble kind of getting over that hurdle and they don't know what they don't know. What are some things that you wish that you had known when you were thinking about getting started?
Well, I definitely wish that I'd known that from the technical perspective, starting a podcast is actually really easy. I think that one of the biggest blocks that I had was that it was going to be so hard. Oh my gosh, you've got to be like a tech wizard to know how to start a podcast. And when you sit down and you follow the steps, it is so simple. It's easier than starting a website, I promise you. And I've started multiple websites, but it actually can be easy. And I wish that I'd known the only way that I'd ever get better is over time. And I discovered that through going through the experience. But I wish that someone had said to me at the beginning, it's okay to be nervous. The first one's always going to be a little bit, well, I say cringeworthy. And I only say cringeworthy because I sounded probably more like a robot. You could probably tell that I was reading. I just hadn't had the time and practice yet to develop the skill. I think that podcasting is a skill that you develop over time. If you walk into starting a podcast with this expectation that it's going to be fantastic to begin with, you're probably setting yourself up for unnecessary disappointment, because I just knew that it wasn't necessarily going to be the best. I knew that it was going to take me time to get better, but I only really, really learned how much I've grown over the years through doing it, through taking the action. And in terms of it being scary, as a fellow introvert, I can promise you it's not a scary thing once you get started. It's almost like all those analogies when you're at the top of a cliff and you're looking down in the water. It's really scary before you take the leap. But once you're in that water and you're swimming, you've done it. Once you've hit record and you published your first one, then you keep on going. I should probably say, I probably did still feel nervous. The nerves didn't go away for a long, long time, but I was willing to sit down and show up despite the nerves. I was willing to sit down and record it, even though, it was a little bit cringeworthy. One of the things that I don't know whether it really worked in my favor, but I was did not want to tell anyone that I started a podcast when I did. Sort of kept it as my little baby secret. I wanted to get really comfortable and then over time. But even if you do that, it's still better to have a podcast and keep it hidden for a little bit till you feel comfortable versus not having a podcast at all. Because now I can comfortably promote my podcast Whereas in the past, it took me a long time to get there. It's like the tunnel. Oh my gosh, I'm sharing so many analogies. The only way to get to the light of the tunnel is to go through that dark bit, to go through the hard stuff, to go through the discomfort, to go through like feeling really bad and not knowing what you're doing. And the chances are it's just like driving a car. We're really bad at the beginning. And the only way you get better at driving a car is practice, practice, practice. And the only way that any introvert will get better, and actually an extrovert as well, just because someone is an extrovert doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a great podcaster. Actually, I think that it works sort of in our favor because introverts, like, we're very introspective. We think a lot about how is this going to be perceived? How can I explain this in a way that people really understand? And I think that deep empathy we have for our listeners, at least I have that for my listeners. Like, I really think about what I'm going to say when I record, and I make sure that I'm sharing it in a way that will hopefully land for them and have an impact. Whereas maybe someone else who isn't so introverted, they probably think everyone thinks like them. Whereas introverts, the way that we speak and the way we deliver our material can be embraced by both introverts and extroverts. I don't know. I'm just making an assumption there, but yeah.
Yeah, those introvert superpowers. We definitely can lean into those, and that introspection it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because we can lean into it in terms of understanding our audience and having that empathy, but it also is the part of us that makes us not really want to put ourselves out there and overthink things and really get into that perfectionism spiral. So it's kind of both a blessing and a curse. So kind of balancing those two aspects together for sure.
But there's a good chance that half of our listeners are going to be introverted and the other half will be extroverted. So you're always going to attract people to you who love that maybe softer side or genuine side, the authenticity. The way that I speak, I'm definitely not just so much reserved, but I'm a thinker, like I'm a deep thinker, and I share that. Now, that's going to resonate with the other deep thinkers in the world. And it's okay if you repel some people. That's fine. But I think that I just share what I share, and you hope that it lands with the people who need that information and who need to hear it. And they can't hear it if you're not sitting there at the microphone, sharing the wisdom that you have, sharing the help and the strategies that is going to make their life easier. That's why we ultimately do it. I'm definitely not recording my podcast for myself or just to hear my own voice. I'm doing it because even if one person can hear and it helps them on that day that they're listening, that for me is always considered to be a win.
Right. Absolutely. We definitely don't do this to hear our own voices. Making that impact is so important to so many podcasters. And that's what I hear over and over as the podcast teacher. I ask people why they want to start a podcast, and they say they just want to help more people. They want to expand their reach. They want to make a bigger impact. So it's just wonderful to hear that reaffirmation that that is one of the reasons you keep showing up as well.
I was going to add something to that. As I said, I was a writer to begin with, and I think it's so good to have like a different medium that you can send your clients to, or customers or students, or just your audience. I think I actually recently made my list. Like, tell me how you best want to get the content that I have to provide you with. Is it on the podcast? Is it on social media? Is it via written form? Is it short form, long form? And it was really spread out evenly. There are some people who love the short and sweet podcast episodes. There are some people who want to read a longer blog post. There's some. So just to offer them that extra means of reaching you in the way that they like to best receive the information is just like a bonus. That's why I always think if you only write and you do no video or no audio, no podcast, and that's not how people connect with you, then you're going to lose a portion of your audience that just really wants that from you. They want to hear your voice. They want to hear you speak. They want to know you on a deeper level. They want to hear what you have to share with them in terms of your services and your products and your courses and so forth. But you're losing that section of your audience. Like if you don't have a podcast, then you can't share that with them. Whereas when I write, and if I send an email or I put a blog post or I do social media content, I always say, like, if you want more information, go and listen to this podcast episode. It goes into deeper. And so it's just that extra layer to your business that you can add that isn't that difficult to do. It really is not that difficult to do. The number one thing that I'm going to say to anyone that's listening to this, if you're walking into podcasting assuming that it's going to be hard, that one thought is going to be the thing that's holding you back. And the only way that I learned this, it's really weird because I had a friend who was quite a popular podcaster, and I was an author of books, and I've written over 20 books, and she's saying she's struggling to write her first book. And I said, that's so weird. Like writing books is really, really easy. And I'm struggling to start my own podcast because I think it's really hard. And she's saying, that's really weird because podcasting is really easy. And so I just realized the moment I had that thought, podcasting can be easy. I think 10 days later, I started a podcast. It was already launched with a bunch of episodes. It's just that idea that it can be easy. And I promise you, it can be easy the moment that you have this thought that it can be easy. It can be easy. As someone who is really resistant to like doing things that are hard, I have found it to be probably one of the easiest things to add to my business.
Yes, one of my best coaches says, let it be easy. And he says, how can you let this be easy? And so often we build it up in our minds. We think that it's hard. We make it hard. We are creating that mental block for ourselves, exactly like you just said. And so kind of reframing of, how can I let this be easy? And so when it comes to starting a podcast, I hear some people say, well, I want to record the video and I want to put it on YouTube as well. And I want to repurpose it into a blog post. And they want to do all the things. I was actually just chatting with someone about this earlier today. They want to do all the things because they're all quote unquote best practices. And so embracing that mindset of, let this be easy. How can we let this be easy? And kind of diving into the, let's not go to YouTube and blogging and all of the things right now. We can let this be easy by just focusing on audio.
Yeah. And like what you said, that's fine if you want to do those things, but I haven't done all those things all the time. You don't have to. It's just like understanding there aren't any have tos when it comes to podcasting. Like you're the boss. If you want to podcast twice a week, do it twice a week. If you want to do it once a fortnight, do it once a fortnight. If you want to do it an hour, do it an hour. If you want to do 10 minutes, like me, do 10 minutes. You get to set the rules. And I do recommend as introverts, you choose the rules that work best for you. I never walked in expecting that I had to do anything other than just show up every week and do my content and then share it with my audience. But sometimes it was only via email, nowhere else. Definitely not on YouTube and all that. They're not essential. You have to do things for the right reason, but not because you feel a pressure to do so. And I do not want to be putting any extra pressure on myself to do anything that I don't have to do it, because I got into where I am so far just by experimenting, number one, and just questioning all the shoulds in business. You know, who said there's no rule that you have to do that? The only rule is like you show up, you record a podcast at a consistent, like when you want to, for however long you want to.
Right, right. And it's so inspirational to hear you talk because some of those things, I am personally still struggling with. And I know that many of the listeners out there are as well. And so, in addition to some of the wonderful, helpful nuggets that you've already given us today, is there anything that you would add to that just as we're wrapping up here? If there were an introvert out there who's hesitating to start their own podcast, is there anything else beyond what we've already covered that you would say to them to encourage them to get started?
I definitely would say that start by just knowing that you can take tiny little baby steps. When it comes to starting a podcast, I think that before I even really took it seriously, I ordered my microphone. I'm thinking, well, one day, just order the microphone. The microphone is at home. And then I started dreaming about what could the podcast name, like if I had a podcast, what would it be? But just allow your mind to wonder and just one little thing at a time. Like when it comes to goal setting and everything that I teach, it's always little baby steps. You never look at the whole elephant and think you've got to swallow it whole. It's just allow yourself to dream and allow yourself to be nervous. And I think that it's okay to go into podcasting knowing that you're going to be nervous probably for the first few months. I definitely was. And I think that the worst thing that you can do is tell yourself that you will only start it when you stop feeling nervous. When I'm stepping outside my comfort zone and I'm doing things that make me feel uncomfortable, I'm going to be nervous because I'm a human. I have those normal human emotions. But when it comes to doing anything that I'm nervous about, it's like I'm always thinking about the ultimate reward, like what's waiting for me at the end? What's the consequence of taking action? And do I like that reward? That's what makes me do things that I necessarily don't love the idea of doing, or I don't like feeling uncomfortable, but I do like the reward. I always think, I come to the end of my life and I'm 80, what are the things that I want to wish that I had at least tried? And I knew that because I had an inkling that I wanted to start a podcast, I knew that I would regret at least not trying. You can try it. I recommend that they just try. And if they don't love it, don't do it anymore. It's fine. Just at least try it. Take that first step. And you won't know if you enjoy it until you've started it. And you won't know how much better you can grow and get better at podcasting until you keep on going with it over time. I've only gotten more comfortable over time. That's it. Definitely didn't come from sitting there on first day. And if I'd taken those first few episodes as like a barometer of what my podcast was going to be years later, I probably wouldn't have continued on. But I did not expect them to be perfect and just do things imperfectly. That's my other advice. Just do it imperfectly. You know what? You can actually go back and delete old episodes if you don't like them. I haven't done that, but if I wanted to, I could go back and delete the first 100. I mean, you are the boss. It's your podcast. You get to do it in a way that serves you best. If it makes you feel like uncomfortable, but you still want to do it, take the action anyway. I was like a life coach for full time, like 20 years ago. And the best thing that I have to offer anyone when it comes to chasing your goals is get comfortable with the discomfort. Because there's two sorts of pain you can have in life: the pain of discomfort or the pain of regret. And I always think like the pain of regret is so much worse. Pain of regret, you can't do anything about it years later. When you're 80 looking back and you wish you'd done it, can't go back in time. But in terms of like the discomfort of taking action, you can get through that. But you can only get through that by taking action.
Yes. Feel the fear and do it anyway. I think that's the mantra of this episode, keeping the end goal in mind.
I was going to say one more thing with regards to that, but often when it comes to business, I remember like a coach once told me like all the things that scare you the most are probably things that you need to be looking at. Those are the gems that you should be paying attention to. Because if you're sitting there and feeling comfortable about all the things that you're doing, you're not stepping outside your comfort zone. To stretch yourself and to grow, you need to be willing to step outside that space, that comfort zone that you're existing in. And the best sign or the best place to look at what is scaring you right now. And what would it be like to take the action anyway and to get to the other side?
Yes, wonderful. I've heard that before. The magic happens outside your comfort zone. It's been so wonderful having you on the show today. Could you just wrap up and tell listeners where they can connect with you further?
Well, my website is inspiringmumlife.com and my podcast is Inspiring Mum Life. But if anyone is wanting to connect, I always send them over to inspiringmumlife.com/thank you, because that is where I have a special gift that is waiting for anyone who wants to stay connected.
Well, thank you again so much for being here today. This was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. I'm just so glad that you've invited me on the podcast. It has been such a pleasure. And I hope that your listeners have just walked away with just a little bit of an inkling that they are brave enough to start a podcast. And if they have that desire to do so, definitely go and chase that goal. It's been the best thing ever, my friend.
Thanks for listening. If something in this episode resonated with you and you're thinking about starting your own podcast, I have a free resource that will help you. It's called the Podcast Roadmap: 7 questions to start your journey. To grab it, just head to thepodcastteacher.com/roadmap. See you next week.